educate, empower, enable, impact. Thank you for tuning in to That Will Never Work podcast, where we share inspiring information and personal experiences related to business and the entrepreneurial journey from those who are leaders in their respective field. Now, here's your host, author and business coach, Maurice.
Thank you very much for tuning in today. I have a powerhouse guest today. She stands out as a remarkable entrepreneur, public speaker, coach, and author, embodying a rare blend of drive, passion, and discipline honed over 20 years of competitive figure skating and dance with Skate Canada. We have a celebrity on our hands, y'all. But as a visionary behind Amante conferences and talks, she has graced over 50 stages, captivating audiences with her dynamic speaking style and insightful presentations. With a podcasting background that includes hosting her own show and being featured on numerous others, like today, she brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to the table. Her forthcoming children's book on life after loss underscores her deep commitment to helping others navigate challenges and find fulfillment, making her an engaging and relatable guest for any podcast seeking to inspire and empower its audience. And not just podcasts, but even the stage. So if you want to talk to her and reach out to her, of course, all the information will be in our show notes. But I thank y'all for listening today. I bring none other to you, Francesca. Francesca, thank you for coming on.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Maurice, for the beautiful intro. Thank you for having me. I feel very honored to be on your show.
Sure, no problem. So thank you very much. So first, let me ask a question. We talked in the green room about employing strategies for personal growth and development. Let me add, before we get all the way into that, let's ask one question, because we talked about you skating, right? And how something like, first of all, how did you get into something like that? And those things that you did for 20 years, how has that assisted in your strategies for personal growth and development?
Absolutely, Maurice, and that's a great question. Kind of going back to the beginning, how I was, and kind of touching on a little bit what you said in that intro there. So my parents had lost my brother in a tragic car accident when he was about 16, 17 years old, around that age group. And so they were never actually planning on having a third child. I came around about 5 years after that passing.
Okay.
So, when I was born, Maurice, it was a lot later in my parents' life. I think that they weren't, I think any parents that have their children, in their mid 40s, late 40s, it's just a kind of a different world. And they were, I think they kind of just thought, well, we'll put her in a couple different activities, see what sticks, see what she's good at, and, see what she comes out doing well at. And they put me in competitive figure skating. They put me in almost every genre of dance, tap, ballet, jazz, modern, lyrical, you name it.
Okay.
They put me in piano, swimming. And I think the funny part was, the joke was, I guess, a little bit on them, Maurice, because I ended up being really good at a lot of them. I worked really hard. I applied myself. And, my folks, to their credit, they just said, you know what, we'll just keep her in these sports. She loves them. She's good at them. So that's kind of how that started. So from a very young age, Maurice, I kept a very, very busy schedule. I was up every morning, doing figure skating from 6 to 8 a.m. And then after school, I'd be back at the dance studio, then back at the ice, and then playing the piano, and somehow fit in swimming in the midst of all this. But taught me from a very young age was that, nobody is going to dictate our success but ourselves. And I think for any entrepreneur out there that's either wanting to become an entrepreneur or they already are an entrepreneur, all of us know out there that, nobody's going to be responsible for the things that we want to achieve but ourselves. We're the ones that we have to apply ourselves. And I think from such a young age, I was able to very quickly articulate that, or realize that, self-discipline, time management, that whole aspect of when we fail and we have to get up. And I think it's just, figure skating was such a beautiful analogy of that. You get up, you fall 99 times, and it's that getting up that 100th time when you don't feel like it, when you don't want to, or getting up at an awful time in the morning to be in a freezing cold rink. But that was what, set really, really good figure skaters apart, for example, was just that ability to just keep pushing and recognize that anything that we wanted was on the other side of that grit, that determination, that resilience. And you know what, Maurice, I really have to, thank my parents once again. I learned so much of that from them, because I think anytime that we see any relative go through life after loss, we're able to very quickly identify what that resilience looks like in real time, and the way that they were able to navigate such a traumatic experience with such grace and just that determination to keep going, to not give up. It was just so beautiful, even at the young age of like 4 or 5, to watch, that I was like, well, if they can do that, I mean, really anything's possible.
So you said a whole mouthful, right? It's a whole lot to unpack, right? And one of the things I want to kind of go back to something that you had mentioned, which is getting up early in the morning. A lot of times, because of us mismanaging our time, mismanaging our drive or our ambitions, whatever it is, we mismanage a lot of different things. And I think one of the things that we do as entrepreneurs, we know how to get up. We know how to be productive. We understand the value in that. So I just want you to talk about a little bit about how you utilize that time you were getting up for figure skating that early in the morning and doing something that you possibly did not really want to do to make it benefit you today.
Absolutely, Maurice. And it's funny because anybody who knows me knows that, like, for such a long time, early mornings were just such a staple part of my routine. But I think there's something that happens that when we get out of our, younger years and we step into adulthood. I remember when I turned in my 20s, I just turned 30 recently, so I'm not far out of this. But I remember when I turned 20, it was kind of like that stage where I remember thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I don't have to get up at 5 a.m. if I don't want to. Right. And quite frankly, Maurice, for the longest time, I didn't. I didn't get up late, but maybe like 7 or 8 a.m. And, that kind of became the norm, because I had this joy and this freedom of, I'm like, I'm not on a really, really tight schedule. Right. But then as the years went on, I started studying for, my, when I was in real estate for about 10 years. So I remember when I started studying for my real estate exam, there was this new discipline that I found again, that I was like, oh, well, I kind of have no choice but to get up really early, because I got to study, and then I'm going to go to the gym, and then I'm going to head to work. And I think what happened for me was that even though there was this freedom I felt with not having this strict schedule, I realized very quickly that I didn't do very well if I wasn't on a schedule that kept that regimen going. So I ended up finding this newfound respect. It's not that I had to get up and I had to keep this routine. It's that I wanted to. Right. And I think that was the beautiful the shift for me, was that I was like, oh my gosh, like, I genuinely want to do this. Because any of you out in the audience know this. If you get up early, there's something beautiful about starting the day the night before and really having that morning time to prepare. So for me, even today, Maurice, what that taught me was that if I can start my day the night before, write into my journal, what is it that I'm preparing for today? What's my intention? How do I want to feel today? What are 3 things I want to get done today that'll really impact my day? Because by the time I wake up in the morning, you're kind of in reactive mode. It's like, let's see what we can get done. But if the night before we have a clear vision of what today is going to look like, at least 3 things that will really make today powerful or, incredible in some way, we get more excited to wake up in the morning. And if we get up, say around 6 or 7 a.m., or even if that looks like 5 to some people, there's just something so beautiful about that, because then by the time 10 a.m. hits, or it's 11 a.m. and we have the pleasure of being on a podcast like I am today, I mean, we have this beautiful time in the morning to adjust our thoughts, to, make our coffee, just have a little bit of that intentional time. I just think it's so powerful. So that's personally how that really impacted me, Maurice.
Nice. So you have a thought on, for those of you who don't know, I met Francesca through Podmatch, and on Podmatch, we have ideas, questions we could ask each other, things like that. And so on her Podmatch, she has this thing where it's from podium to boardroom, right? And some of these things that she's referring to are just a mindset that we need to develop as we are trying to move forward. We would like to achieve our goals and, understand our journey and enjoy the journey for us to get to that goal, right? So Francesca, I have a question. how do we develop that mindset from podium to boardroom, or even from not wanting to get up to the board, to the boardroom, if you will? Where are some other things that we can do and put into practice to get to that space?
Absolutely. And you know what I think it is too, Maurice, what it comes down to was that when I was in competitive figure skating, there was a time, don't get me wrong, as the years went on, it wasn't that I became very good at figure skating. It's just I really worked hard. And, when I started going to those competitions, I started getting to stand on the podium every single time. It was almost without fail. It's just that was kind of the recipe for success, though. I knew that if I worked hard, I showed up every day, and I knew what the judges were going to be expecting of me, I could almost guarantee that I'd be on that podium at that competition. But here's the interesting part. The years that I didn't win, and the years where, I was a bit younger, I started competing when I was 4 years old. I remember there was this one competition, I was maybe 6 years old or so. And I was watching all these older girls standing on the podium. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I want that to be me one day. And I remember there was this other competitor's mom. She walked up to me, and I'll never forget what she said. She goes, Francesca, and her daughter at the time was significantly older than me, very, very good at what she did.
Okay.
She looked at me and she goes, Francesca, I'm going to give you some advice. She goes, as much as standing on the podium is beautiful, she's like, nothing compares to what you feel when you're on that ice. Like standing on a podium's made out of a couple pieces of wood. They paint it black or whatever with a couple numbers on it. She's like, just never forget the fact that what you do out on the ice is so much more special than 2 seconds standing on a podium. And I know it's a bit cheesy, but at the same time, I think when we relate that to life, it's so easy for us to have that podium mentality of like, well, what wins did I get today? And, did I win this thing at work or whatever that is? And it's like, yes, those wins are important, sure. And I'm not discounting that. Don't get me wrong. I certainly enjoyed having my hard work pay off to getting medals for years. But at the same time, Maurice, in my adult life now, I remember that woman saying that to me because there's so many things in business, especially as an entrepreneur, that we fail at, that we fall at, that we have to learn the hard way. There's so many different trials that we kind of go into it and we go, okay, I didn't realize it would be that hard. But it's those failures that make us so strong, that make us good entrepreneurs, that make us good leaders. And what's interesting is that, had I not had that, had I not had that experience all those years prior, oh my gosh, I don't know if I would have appreciated, I remember even when I was taking an exam for my real estate course, most people take it 3-4 times. It's kind of like a big trick test. When I took it the first time, I was very close to passing, but it took me my second try to pass it fully. And, most people just get devastated. They're like, oh my gosh, maybe this is not meant for me. But I remember in that moment, I was like, no, this is amazing. Like this now, I went back, I studied for 3 more months, went back and crushed it. But what was interesting is that it was that moment when I didn't pass that it taught me so much. It gave me that, it just gave me that extra drive I needed. But I think it's all about our outlook. And so that podium to boardroom aspect is that, when I do teach this in my coaching, there's so many different tools that I learned, being on the ice, being on that podium, essentially, in that analogy that I have brought into the boardroom. When you arrive at a meeting, as a small example, Maurice, there's so many others, but if I'm walking into a boardroom, how I look, as sad as this is, but in today's world, if I dress up and I'm, whether we choose to dress more casual or professional, whatever our business motto is, but being true to yourself and showing up with that, showing up with a big smile on your face. I personally love to wear a suit. So I'll, put on my suit like I would a competitive figure skating dress. And when I step onto that ice or step into that boardroom, that first impression takes 7 seconds. Yes. So having that smile on your face, opening up with a nice handshake, sitting down, making that eye contact. I remember making eye contact with the judges, making them feel connected to my performance. And I think that, in today's world, when I step into that boardroom atmosphere, I want every single person in that room to feel like they're seen. I want them to feel heard. But most of all, I don't want them to feel like they're just a number in my day. I want to put my phone away. I want to be present with them, because I don't know, there's something very special about every interaction that we have in a day. And I think that when we're able to have that appreciation for each of those special moments, the same way we would if we were stepping onto the ice and we had 3 minutes for this performance, we wouldn't let that pass us by. We would use every second of it, right? So, it's little things like that, Maurice, that for me have seemed minuscule in the past, but now in my adult life, I'm like, wow, this is like my most beautiful toolkit for stepping into business and being the leader that I want to be.
Wow. So one of the things that I'm really taking from what you're mentioning, especially from the adult that says something to you, to even when you talked about your parents, there's a lot of things there's one word that keeps coming out as being resilient. All the times that people have been knocked down, told no, those type of things. Even like you're saying, like, hey, people can get discouraged by not being number one or even number three like you said, on a podium, not even getting acknowledged. A lot of times, sometimes we don't, and it's just human nature. If we don't get acknowledged, we kind of fall back. We kind of pull away. And now all of a sudden we don't want to keep moving forward. How important is it, and even for yourself, being on the ice? I'm pretty sure that ice was not pleasant when you fell on it, right? I'm pretty sure it hurt, right? So when you have those moments that knock you down and it really hurts, how or what did you have to do to get yourself up, to pull yourself back up, to get to the next space? Because sometimes that's not always easy.
Absolutely. I'm trying to think what it would be back in the day that drove me. I would say in figure skating, anytime that I fell, it was just, I'm one time closer to getting it. So for example, in figure skating, Marie, say if there's a jump. So say if I was trying to land my double loop or my double lutz or like a double flip as an example. Those are, especially when you get into the doubles, you do fall a lot because you're getting used to 2.5 rotations in the air. And so in the midst of that, it would, every time I fell, I'd be like, well, I'm one time closer from getting that jump and landing it. Or, I remember when I was really little, I was doing a sit spin, which is where you're quite low to the ground. You have one leg out and you're spinning. Most people, some competitive figures do their sit spin a lot higher. I wanted mine to be very, very low to the ground. Like I saw on TV with the celebrities and how they did it. And so that resulted in a lot of falling. But every time I fell, I was like, okay, we got this one more time. I mean, gosh, it was like 50, 60, 70 more times before I got it. But eventually I did. I had one of the lowest sit spins. I took pride in that, but it took time. And I think, it's interesting in adult life today. I can definitely see the ones that have that resilience, whether it's from, their childhood circumstances that made them resilient, or from a sport, or just from a dedication to getting, maybe it was just something that they got up one day and they were like, no, I want to push myself to be better than I was yesterday. I think in life today, it's interesting because I'll use that exam as a good example. I've seen so many agents, they take it once or twice and they're like, yeah, I'm good, I'm done. Like no one's going to tell me I failed twice. I'm like, what? Like, that's nothing. You're fine. Keep going.
Right.
You've got this. So, I guess, it was just the drive to keep just that one more time. And I think what's really beautiful, Maurice, is that, if you look at any of the greats, our inventor or historic inventors that, it was the light bulb. I think the light bulb was the 1001st experiment that created in the invention of the light bulb. Look at famous, football players and just in general, famous athletes, and they don't remember the strikeouts. They remember, like I said, they don't remember like them screwing up. They remember all the times that they got the goal. Or I'm clearly not very as familiar with other sports that I am with figure skating, but I just think that we don't remember about any of those. We remember the home runs. We remember all of the incredible things that those whether it's athletes or inventors did. It was all the failed experiments that got them to where they are. Without them, we don't talk about them very often, but Denzel Washington's one of my favorite, like ultimate favorite public speakers. And in one of his speeches, he talks about that it was that 1001st experiment that finally got us the light bulb. And it's just like, wow, I love the fact that he actually notes the 1,000 failed experiments. Like what a beautiful journey to get them where they were. So I think it's just a good reminder. Failures a beautiful, essential part of life.
Mm-hmm. So in this, before I let you go, I have one more question, right? So you talked about failure, you talked about being resilient, you talked about, just your journey as far as figure skating or taking a test and things like that, and even this Denzel experience, right? Listen to him speak, things like that. What would you consider your defining moment in your leadership journey to where you are today?
I would say, Maurice, when I was about, I was about 20 years old, 21 years old. Mm-hmm. So, 9-10 years ago. And I had went through a divorce at a young age. And I remember very distinctly, and he was an incredible human. Just our paths were obviously not meant to align forever. But mm-hmm. at that time in my life, it was a turning point for me, because mm-hmm. everything that defined me, the office that I worked in, the, title that I called myself a wife. This is where I live. This was the office I lived in. Everything that defined who Francesca was, mm-hmm. Became, very much started to reshape. I gave my mm-hmm. notice to the office I was working in. I put the house up for sale that I was living in. I decided that I was going to get a position in another city, and put an offer on a different house. And, within about a month, Maurice, I found myself realizing that my house wasn't selling. So then the other house I put an offer on, that deal did not go through either. Right. The job that I thought I was meant to do only lasted a couple months. It was not the right fit for me. And very, very quickly, I was like, I'm not a wife. This is not the office I work in anymore. This home's not mine. The house I want, I didn't get. Mm-hmm. There were just all these things. And I kind of was like, oh my gosh, I'm starting from scratch. I don't know who I am, what I do. And very, very quickly, I had to make the decision. Either I wallow in this and I play the victim, which I don't want to ever do, right, or I decide to get up and I just keep pushing forward. So I did. And I started studying for my real estate exam. I started, I did not give up on that house search. I did not give up nice. On, getting my house sold. And by the time I knew it, I had passed my real estate exam. I had sold my house. I'd gotten a different house in a new community. I had gotten a position that truly made me happy. Mm-hmm. And things started to fall into place. Maurice, there was an 8-month period there. And it was this 8-month rebuilding of who Francesca was, who Francesca wanted to be. And, very, very quickly, in those moments, you learn who's going to stay on your journey. Mm-hmm. You learn who isn't. You find out very quickly which people in your life are more concerned about status mm-hmm. than they are about your personal growth. And those moments were hard. Obviously, they've come back around now that I'm doing the things that I'm doing. Right. But it did teach me something very, very poignant in those moments that, there's going to be times in our lives where we really do relearn who we are. We have those catalysts, like you said, the defining moments that shape us to where we are today. And it was in those 8 months when I was rebuilding my life, everything, my career, who I was, my self-values, everything. Now when I look at how I lead my team and how I treat other people and how I want other people to feel seen and heard and to help them through their resilience, those moments were very defining for me, because if there's anything that I remember feeling, Maurice, in those moments, was I felt super alone. And it's not a bad thing, but I don't want people to feel that way. I want them to know that no matter what part of their journey that they're in, that they've got this, that they have cheerleaders on the sidelines cheering them on, letting them know that they too can get through absolutely anything. And that's a small example. There's people that go through way worse trials in their life, but it's a small example of showing that, no matter what we go through in life, if we choose that resilience, if we choose that grit to get up every morning, to keep pushing forward, incredible things happen. And I certainly would not be where I am today had I not experienced that. And now when I look back, I mean, my best content for my public speaking, for my coaching, it comes out of those moments where I had to have the grit and the resilience. And even to be able to talk to people like you today, Maurice, I'm so grateful that those moments in the journey came, because, without the failures, without those hard moments in our lives, what do we have to speak on, right?
Right.
I'm sure for you, that's, it's just, that's the parts that make us who we are. And it's beautiful. So that what I would say would probably be one of my more defining moments in my life. There's other ones, but that one really stuck, especially at the age of 20. We don't know who we are at the age of 20, right? We're learning that. So that definitely shaped me.
So, Francesca, I appreciate you coming on today. Listen, those individuals that would like to talk to somebody like yourself, how can they reach out to you? How can they hear your speeches and things like that? Where can they find you?
Absolutely, Maurice. So you can find me on LinkedIn at just Franchesca Amante. I'm also on YouTube with Franchesca Amante. But in terms of conversation and everything like that, Instagram is the best place. So my handle, I abbreviated my name a bit because it's a long Italian name. So on Instagram, my handle is Fresca Amante. So Fresca Amante is what I've abbreviated to on Instagram. Once you get to that page, in my bio, you have everything. You can see a link to where my resilience coaching page is. You'll see a link to where my children's book is, where, I do different interviews and speaking, everything. My conference page is all linked in there. So I would say Instagram, and that way I'd be happy to chat. I'd love to talk to whoever in the audience. And and Maurice, I'm so grateful for you. Thank you for having me today.
Sure, no problem. So Francesca, before I let you go though, I have one more question though. It's my would you rather question. Would you rather choose 3 doors or a fork in the road?
Oh, that's beautiful. I mean, I think because I've had so many forks in the road, I would say that.
Really?
I mean, even recently I had a fork in the road 8 or 9 months ago. And it was probably one of the most beautiful forks in the road. It brought me to where I am today. I have a big smile on my face because of that fork in the road. So I would say fork in the road. I think it's probably one of the most powerful moments in our life are those forks. That's for sure.
Nice. I'm happy for you. I'm happy that you were able to share something like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Maurice. I love that.
Thank you. So, but thank you for coming on the show today. Of course, everything that you just mentioned will be in the show notes for today.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Maurice. It was a pleasure. And thank you for everything that you do every day. You inspire many.
Thank you. And continue to listen to That Will Never Work podcast. I will talk to you later.
Thanks for listening. Find us on social media at Chisholm Group LLC and check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, that will never work, or will it?